A collection of extremely rare mummy portraits was discovered by archaeologists working in the Fayum region in Egypt. According to a press release by the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the portraits were found on coffins in a large underground funerary building in catacomb style, which dates to the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, and is part of a cemetery at the Jerza archaeological site. What are mummy portraits? Mummy portraits are detailed paintings of the dead, which were actually done while the person was still alive. They were usually painted on wood and date to the Greco-Roman period in Egypt, approximately between the 1st century BCE 1st century C, according to an article on ancientorigins.net. The portraits were found attached to a number of coffins with different styles, some of them being fashioned in human form, and others made in the Greek style with gabled roofs, explained the head of the mission, Dr. Jahid Bassam. The paintings are known for their realism and beauty. A group of researchers even succeeded in using details in the paintings in order to diagnose neurological diseases, which they then confirmed by examining the corresponding mummies. Other portraits show items like jewelry, which was subsequently found on the body of the mummy. Dr. Adel Akasha, head of the Central Department of Egyptian Antiquities in Central Egypt, underlined the importance of the discovery. These are the first mummy portraits to be found in over a century, the last having been found by the famous English archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie during his excavations in the Fayum region 115 years ago. Dr. Akasha stated, other rare discoveries in the same building included a terracotta statue of the goddess Isis Aphrodite, found in one of the wooden coffins, as well as a number of papyri written in Demotic and Greek script, which mainly describe social, economic and religious conditions of the region's inhabitants at that time. The discoveries at the site also illustrate the stratification of society during the ancient period. The economic level of the deceased can be clearly seen according to the quality of their burial, and especially the mummification process. The village of Jerza had originally been established in the 3rd century BCE, during the reign of King Ptolemy II Philadelphus, as part of an agricultural reclamation project aiming to secure the food supply. The village's inhabitants included Egyptians as well as Greeks, a fact that is clearly reflected in the archaeological finds. The remarkable discovery of the mummy portraits happened during the 10th excavation season at the site, which has been excavated in 2016. According to Dr. Adel Akasha, head of the Central Department of Egyptian Antiquities in Central Egypt. Archaeologists who discovered the remains of 2 large ancient stone buildings at the top of a hill in Albania say they have now started excavating its highest point. According to research leader Professor Piotr Dicek, they have already uncovered the foundations of 2 extensive buildings. The original discovery of the lost city near today's Shkodër by the village of Bushit was made unexpectedly in 2018, when excavations first started. The new location for excavations was based on geophysical research from 2018, which revealed solid walls. During excavations, the researchers uncovered the remains of a large structure with an area of almost 20 by 12 meters. Next to it was another building of similar size, and a little further a slightly smaller one, 10 by 7 meters. Dicek said, the city was abandoned. There were no traces of its violent end in the form of damage and burning. After being abandoned, it eroded over the last approx. 2,000 years and its walls slid down the slopes. He added that it also served as a local quarry. The walls of many surrounding houses are built with cut large blocks from the archaeological site. Despite the erosion and human activity within the ancient city, archaeologists managed to find fragments of old ceramic vessels. Their analysis established that the hill had already been inhabited in the 2nd millennium BCE, and abandoned probably at the turn of the era or a little later. Inside the buildings, the researchers found fragments of amphorae, mainly from Italy, and dated to the 3rd and 2nd century BCE, as well as skyphoi Greek 2-handled deep wine cups. Dicek said, most of them are very small. In antiquity, such miniature vessels were either toys or cult items. It is difficult to determine the functions they had in this place. So far, scientists have not been able to determine the function of the discovered buildings. They believe that they are not similar to any other buildings in this area, which hinders their identification. But considering that they were exposed on the hill, they had to be prestigious. The buildings had solid, 90 centimeters wide foundations. Local raw material, conglomerate rock, was used. The builders did not use mortar. The roofs were covered with specially profiled Greek-style tiles. Dicek said, this means that they were not ordinary residential houses. In addition, they are in the dominant location in the city. We could make different guesses, but we have to wait for the results of further research. All data indicate that the discovered buildings come from the Hellenistic period, the end of the 3D, and the first half of the 2nd century BCE. In 2018, archaeologists uncovered solid, Cyclopean defensive walls, 2 gates with bastions and fragments of buildings. Scientists estimate that the fortress had an area of nearly 30 acres. The fortified city was located between 2 important Illyrian, present-day Albania, center Skadra, the capital of Illyria, and the Greek city of Lissos. Perhaps it was Byzania, but archaeologists are still looking for convincing evidence to support this hypothesis. The city was described by a Roman historian, Livy 59 BCE 17c, in the context of the battles between the Roman troops and the last Illyrian king, Gentius. The Albanian team leader was Dr. Samir Shpuza from the Institute of Archaeology in Tirana. Hello and welcome to Blast World Mysteries. Subscribe. On December 9, 2021, Egypt's archaeological mission, headed by renowned Egyptologist and former Antiquities Minister Zahi Hawass, resumed its search for Queen Nefertiti's tomb in the West Bank of Luxor, after years of controversy over her final resting place. These studies have begun to bear fruit. Famous Egyptologist Zahi Hawass recently stated that he is confident that a mummy he is currently studying is that of Queen Nefertiti. In an interview with El Independiente, Zahi Hawass assures that he is very close to answering some unknowns. "I'm sure I'll reveal Nefertiti's mummy in a month or two," Hawass told. The renowned archaeologist is presently in Madrid these days, and presents a long-awaited lecture on women in Egypt, under the pharaohs this Tuesday, within the framework of Daughters of the Nile, an exhibition that brings together 300 objects from a dozen countries. Nefertiti, whose full name was Neferuiten Nefertiti, lived between roughly 1370 and 1330 BC. Queen Nefertiti is King Akhenaten's beautiful and astute wife. She backed him wholeheartedly and was one of the strongest supporters of his new religious call to worship the new god Aten. She was the lady of the Amarna period, and one of the most famous queens of ancient Egypt. According to some studies, Queen Nefertiti co-reigned with her husband. According to recent research, King Akhenaten ruled alone, and Nefertiti may have ascended to power after his death. There are still far too many mysteries and unanswered questions surrounding this queen's life in general. While the mummified remains of multiple pharaohs and important ancient Egyptian figures have been discovered, Nefertiti has yet to be identified. "I am still looking for 2 things: Nefertiti's grave and her body," Hawass said. "I really believe that Nefertiti ruled Egypt for 3 years after Akhenaten's death under the name of Smenkhkare. We already have DNA from the 18th dynasty mummies, from Akhenaten to Amenhotep II or III, and there are 2 unnamed mummies labeled KV21 and B," he said. "In October we will be able to announce the discovery of the mummy of Ankhesenamun, Tutankhamun's wife, and her mother, Nefertiti. There is also in tomb KV35 the mummy of a 10-year-old boy. If that child is the brother of Tutankhamun and the son of Akhenaten, the problem posed by Nefertiti will be solved. I am sure that I will reveal which of the 2 unnamed mummies could be Nefertiti," Hawass added. Despite being the subject of intense curiosity and investigation for more than a century, it is believed that there are still a staggering number of undiscovered mummies and treasures from ancient Egypt. "We have barely found 30% of everything that is underground. A few days ago a mission found tombs inside several houses in Alexandria," Hawass said. "Modern Egypt is built on the ancient, and that is why the heritage that remains hidden is immense." However, Hawass also pointed out that the main threat to the protection of Egyptian heritage is climate change. "There must be a center to control climate change and tourism," he said. Hello and welcome to Epic World Mystery. Subscribe. A Polish-Maroconian team of archaeologists have discovered a Roman military observation tower in Volubilis, Morocco. This is important for research on the system of Roman fortifications built on the outskirts of the empire, says Maciej Czapski, an archaeologist from the University of Warsaw. Similar military observation towers had been previously discovered during excavations in Scotland, Germany, and Romania, but never in Morocco. From the 5th decade CE, Morocco was part of the Roman Empire, but since it was geographically isolated, from a scientific point of view, little is known about this region, and archaeologists treat it as a niche. Based on satellite images, We have selected several sites that have a common feature, an oval plan with an inscribed rectangle or square. We have chosen this particular site because it is located farthest to the south. There are a few brief descriptions of this site in French publications, indicating that the place could have been associated with the Roman army, says Chapsky. The researcher adds that preparations for excavations included dozens of hours spent in libraries in Rimini and London, but this in the analysis of satellite images did not guarantee success. We were lucky to have started digging in the right place. Just a 500 to 600 meters shift of the starting point would have resulted in finding nothing. Our discovery is a significant contribution to the general state of research on the Roman lines. The system of Roman border fortifications, erected on the outskirts of the empire, especially vulnerable to raids, says Chapsky. Included amongst the find were the foundations and fragments of walls preserved up to a height of approx. 80 centimeters. A fragment of internal staircase and a fragment of cobblestone surrounding the building on the south side have also been preserved. The outer wall has not survived. Tile fragments are in a very bad condition. The researchers also found fragments of weapons and accessories of Roman legionnaires. We found fragments of javelins, nails from sandals of Roman legionnaires, fragments of ornaments typical for Roman military belts, says Chapsky. Until now, we had a very broad dating. We knew that there was a defense system of the Roman province between the 1st and 3rd centuries C. We want to narrow down the chronology and explain whether it was a single system or different systems at different times. We have a hypothesis that the system we have discovered existed during the reign of Antoninus Pius. We have some military finds dating back to this period, around the 2nd century C, says Chapsky. He adds that a lot is known about the military and political situation of this region. We know that battles were fought, but we do not know the details what their course was, whether they were very heavy, and to what extent. We know that in some cases it ended with signing treaties as a result of diplomatic activities, but we do not know the details. The main focus of the Polish-Moroccan team is determining how the Romans maintained the acquired territories, and what were their contacts with the local population. We are dealing with the relations between the administration and the local population. We know that these relations were quite turbulent, because epigraphic evidence confirms it. We want to find out how the Romans controlled the flow of people and goods, that is, how they controlled the border zone, says Chapsky. The head of the Polish part of the research team, Dr. Radosław Karasiewicz-Sipiorski from the University of Warsaw, and the Moroccan team leader is Professor Amir Akaraz from the National Institute of Archaeology and Cultural Heritage, INSIP, in Rabat. The team consists of 10 people. In the near future, the researchers plan to complete the documentation and publish a report. Next year, after the end of Ramadan, they will begin field work at a different site. They hope to discover more towers, which would help to complete the concept of the Roman defense system. Next year, at the turn of May, we will dig at a different site. The discovery of another tower should be easier. We now know where to dig and what to expect, says Chapsky.